Hi, everybody. JB back again with episode 9 of my Did You Ever Wonder series. Today's topic is about Fayetteville's old theaters. Now, on this screen I have here, this is the Palace in 1940. I was going to try to show you a couple of things here, a way of determining the time of different pictures, especially if it's movie theaters. It helps you a lot. Here's a couple of movies here. It's the Seahawk and Military Academy. I can't read this outside marquee, but the inside marquee is Jack Holt in Outside the 3 Mile Limit. That came out in March of 1940, and the other two movies came out, both of them in August of 1940. So that would place that with a little bit of delay getting to Fayetteville within a month or two of that. So this picture is probably taken in maybe September, early October of 1940. You can just barely on the left see the dime of the Scott 5 and dime. You'll see that picture later on. So I'm going to go through some of the old theaters sort of in chronological order. But the first one I want to talk about was the Lyric Theater. There were a bunch of them. I'll mention them in a second. That survived a very short amount of time. The Lyric hung on from 1908 to 1921. Started as an air dome down on Dixon Street. An air dome is what I call a drive-in movie for people. It had a front like this. Had walls usually on the side and then a theater at the back, but they were open air. In bad weather, you couldn't see the movie. It had to be good weather. Now, this picture of the Lyric, once again, using the movies there, see the burglar Cupid, and the Shepherd's Daughter. I looked those up. I'm checking all this on IMDb, the Internet Movie Database. The dates of those movies: the burglar Cupid came out in January 1909, and the Shepherd's Daughter in April 1909. So that places us sometime in that time frame, close to that. The thing about this, I'm not sure whether this is the Dixon Street Air Dome or the one on North Block that Frank Barr built. He was the first owner. He also used a building just to the south on Block Street during the wintertime. So I'm not sure whether this is the Dixon Street one. It's right at that exact time frame when he moved him up there. Anyway, in 21, this would be 19 or about 2021 range, or I'm sorry, about 1918, 19. E.C. Robertson would buy the Lyric, and he just kind of allowed it to die as he built the Victory, which we'll talk about in a sec. What I want to do here is just mention some of the other names of some of the theaters. I mean, there's bunches of them over time. There was the Ozark Air Dome, which was right across the street from the Ozark Theater. There's a place called the Bijou Dream Theater, which is an incredible name. It was actually a chain, but it's a cool name, Bijou Dream Theater. There was the Baudette, the Pastime Electric Theater, bunches of them. I'll talk about all this at the end too. So the next theater, and again, that went out of business in 21. Now, Mr. Robertson, like I said, bought the Lyric and let it go out of business because he was billing. You might remember this picture. This was my favorite picture I talked about of the east side of the Fayetteville Square. And in the Balms building there's the Victory Theater from 1919 to 1926. At this picture, again, the movie here showing is Clara Bow in My Lady's Lips, which came out in July of 1925. So again, we got this, like August, September 1925 is when this picture was taken. Within a year, 1925, of this picture, W.F. Sonneman would come to town and start buying up the movie theaters and he had an empire eventually of all 4 of the main theaters in town, and the Victory would be eliminated and the Palace would take its place. Okay, and this is a little bit in jumping in the time here, but I'm doing the Ozark. The Ozark Theater was first built as the Knights of Pythias. I always worry about that one. Knights of Pythias Theater in 1904, 1905, and later on Sonneman would take that over. And you can see the dates on when the theater was open. I always point out that when I grew up here, the Ozark and Collier's Drug were the coolest places in town when you're a kid trying to get cool in the summertime. They had great air conditioning. And if I can do this cursor without moving everything, see this part that was saved of the Ozark Theater as we still have it today is this front part. that back part, which is part of the theater and this backstage and all that, that was removed in the saving of the overall theater. The next theater, a little bit out of the time frame, was the Royal Theater, and you can see it there on the right. There's Bud's Department Store. It's the Post Company, and next to it's Bud's Royal Theater. The two Bud brothers own those. That's where the West Mountain Brewery and Tim's Tiny Tim's Pizza are today. And the Royal Theater, again, Sonneman would take this over in the 20s. And what I wanted to mention about the Royal, that was the cheapo theater. This is where you were little kids, you could go in there. I think it was like 15 cents or something to go on a Saturday matinee. And the story I wanted to tell you about that, I've got stories about all these really, but the Royal Theater, I saw Smiley Burnett there. I think it was Gene Autry's sidekick. It was really bizarre. He had 5 o'clock shadow, looked like he was hungover. It was a strange experience. Anyway, that happened at the Royal. And then the next theater, of course, is the wonderful Palace on the east side. A couple of things to point out here. Notice there's Fayetteville Drug. And look at that store there. There's Walton's. That's Walton's 5 and Dime, replaced Scott 5 and Dime. That's Sam Walton's second store in Fayetteville. His first store was over on the west side of the square, kind of basically where Riff Raff is now today. Anyway, again, the Palace, you can date this. Of course, you can see the car. There's a 57 Chevy jumping out at me in that picture. But I checked these movies, and they're from 1958. That Drag Strip Riot and The Cool and the Crazy, they both came out in March of 1958. And I got, later on, you probably remember, when it stopped being a movie house, it was the place they held the Arkansas Opry country shows in the 70s with Sergeant Shirley West, the musicians playing there. 2 stories about the Palace. First time my mother ever decided I could go to a movie by myself, I went up to the Palace and the darn thing caught on fire. I came out of there like a rocket. Everyone was safe, but I thought that's pretty bizarre. You finally get a chance to go and it catches on fire. And also, one other thing I remember real clearly is I saw one of those quote unquote Bonnie and Clyde cars. All you had to do is get like a 38 Ford V8, take it out in the field and shoot it like crazy, and then bring it back into town, tell them it was Bonnie and Clyde's. It may or may not have been. And the next one is, and the last, now notice W.S. Sonneman's been on all 4 of them. At one time he had the Royal, the Palace, the Ozark, and New York. New York was built in 41, lasted till 1980. Again, W.S. Sonneman. The architect there was Paul Young, who's the father of my friend Bob Young, who does great, wonderful work at Evergreen Cemetery and other places restoring cemeteries. In 1948, W.S. Sonneman divested himself of all the theaters, and Malco took him over. I don't think anybody realized that for years because everybody talked about it being Sonneman's theaters. Anyway, the UARC is where, is up by the university, of course, up on West Dixon. So this is where kind of a lot of times cooler and hipper movies were shown. But we had other shows. I remember seeing Westerns there too. And I think I kind of wanted to go through that real fast to get all of them and keep it short. And that's the old time sit down theaters. I didn't talk about the drive-ins. I just talked about the sit down theaters. So anyway, quick note here. I have next summer, if the printing companies come back into business to where they're printing books again, my book Forgotten Fayetteville in Washington County is due out next summer, 2021. And articles about many of the topics I've been talking about in these videos will be in there, including a really long, extensive look at these movie theaters. I recommend if you like that, that's where the information's at. So anyway, so that's all of that one today. I want to thank you all again for joining me. And again, during this pandemic, be safe and healthy, and bye for now. Goodbye, everyone.